President Yoon made another appearance at today's impeachment trial hearing to defend his martial law declaration. And this time, also joining the session was former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun as a key witness. Meanwhile, the CIO handed its investigation of the president over to the prosecution earlier than expected. The local economy grew 2% on year in 2024, lower than the central bank's expectation. It managed to grow 0.1% in the fourth quarter, affected by the impact of the brief martial law imposition. Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol spoke over the phone with his new U.S. counterpart, Marco Rubio, for the first time and discussed ways to cooperate on North Korea nuclear issues. It's January 23rd, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start at the Constitutional Court, where the fourth hearing into the impeachment case against President Yoon was held today, again in his presence. The court also began hearing from key witnesses. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young brings us the latest.
Tensions ran high as President Yoon's impeachment trial resumed, as former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun testified as the first witness, vehemently defending Yoon's martial law on December 3rd that shook the nation. The Constitutional Court on Thursday held a fourth trial hearing on Yoon's impeachment, which the president himself attended. The first of 10 witnesses approved by the court, Kim is one of the key figures implicated in planning and executing the martial law. Considered Yoon's right-hand man, Kim initially said he'd take responsibility for the chaos that ensued. His loyalty appeared intact. Kim at first refused to respond to the National Assembly's impeachment panel, prompting an abrupt break.
If I proceed with responding to the other side, there is a significant risk that the facts may be distorted. Therefore, I would like to now decline to take part in the witness questioning.
Questions fired by both the president's lawyers and the National Assembly. Much attention was on the planning and execution of martial law, as the National Assembly side says it disrupted the country's constitutional order and that a formal cabinet meeting was not held to legitimize it. First, regarding the legality of declaring martial law, the former defense minister said Yoon had kept to proper procedures of holding a cabinet meeting beforehand, saying that a copy of the martial law declaration was distributed to cabinet members. Also, Kim said he had composed a controversial note that the finance minister had received, ordering the preparation of a budget for an emergency legislative body, presumably to replace the elected National Assembly. This came after President Yoon initially said he could not remember whether he wrote the note, before recently denying that he had. Questions also focused on the martial law proclamation, which included a ban on political activities, one of the Assembly's grounds for impeaching Yoon. Kim claimed he typed up the document, but couldn't answer which word processor he used. As the president himself questioned his former minister, Yoon appeared to emphasize that he'd considered the martial law proclamation unrealistic and ineffective. The president also stated that his martial law had not failed, but ended quicker than expected, as he had ordered soldiers to withdraw once the National Assembly voted to lift the order. Through his testimony, Kim appeared to reinforce Yoon's position that martial law was declared to uphold the constitutional order, prompted by the opposition-led parliament's efforts to impeach incumbent officials, and sought effective governance and budget execution.
As the trial proceeds, the president plans to attend all future hearings scheduled till February 13th. This would allow him to directly question and challenge witnesses in the courtroom.
Meanwhile, the Constitutional Court says it has acquired investigation transcripts from individuals involved in the martial law incident. It has also secured classified documents related to the National Election Commission and agreed to call in an intelligence official related to the matter as a witness to the trial. This suggests the court will examine claims from Yoon's side that alleged election fraud was a major reason for declaring martial law. The Assembly's panel has objected to including election fraud suspicion in the trial.
Recklessly asserting baseless theories of election fraud appears to be an attempt to delay the proceedings and undermine trust in the electoral system. Such actions should be appropriately restrained.
The fifth hearing will be held after the Lunar New Year holiday on February 4th with 3 witnesses to testify. Seoul, Arirang News.
Today, the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials officially transferred its investigation of President Yoon to the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office. For more, we have our Kim Jong-sil standing by live at the prosecution's office here in the capital city. Evening, Jong-sil. Let's begin with this latest development.
Good evening to you, Jung-min. The atmosphere here at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office has been rather quiet this evening, with the investigation into President Yoon having transferred here as of today. The CIO officially requested the prosecution take over the case. This is something that took place after 50 days since the declaration of martial law back in December. Now take a listen to a CIO official from this morning.
The CIO has today decided to request the prosecution of the suspect in accordance with Article 26, Section 1 of the CIO Act, and has referred the case to the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office.
Why has the case been transferred earlier than expected, and what led to this decision?
Jung-min, the case was handed over to the prosecution earlier, as you said, due to President Yoon's repeated refusal to cooperate with the CIO, raising legal questions about their authority. Now, despite the CIO's efforts, including securing warrants that led to actual arrest and detention of a sitting president, the investigation has faced backlash and remained at a standstill. Now, the only session President Yoon attended for CIO was the initial 10 hours on the first day of his arrest, where he remained silent. Yoon refused to appear for further questioning from the next day, citing health and safety concerns. The CIO also faced repeated interference from the Presidential Security Service and its attempts to seize evidence and search the presidential residence, including the president's secret phone. Given these challenges, the CIO decided it would be more effective for the prosecution to take over, which was initially expected to be handed over next Tuesday. Now, all eyes will be on the prosecutors in this building behind me as they carry out this unprecedented investigation.
Jong-sil, now what's expected about the prosecution's investigation?
The prosecution will obviously look at the allegations of insurrection and abuse of power flagged by the CIO as they review over 30,000 records, investigative records handed over by the CIO. While insurrection charges are typically handled by the police, no sitting president has ever been investigated by them. Past investigations of former presidents were all conducted by the prosecution. Legal experts note that while President Yoon's argument is technically valid, it does not prevent the prosecution or CIO from pursuing the case.
Technically, it's true that the power to investigate crimes of insurrection has been given to the police, but the prosecution office retains the power to investigate any crimes that are related to crimes they are investigating.
Now, the question is, will the president cooperate this time?
Now, that remains uncertain, Jung-min. President Yoon, having served as a prosecutor general, knows the process almost better than anyone. So we'll just have to keep a close eye on how this thing develops. Now, that's all I have for this hour. Back to you.
All right, Jong-sil, thank you for that coverage. That was our Kim Jong-sil reporting live from the prosecutor's office. Moving on, the top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. held their first phone call on Thursday, during which Washington stressed the alliance between the two countries. Also addressed was North Korea's nuclear issue. Our Kim Bo-kyung gives us the details.
South Korea and the U.S.'s top diplomats held their first phone talks on Thursday and agreed to maintain close cooperation based on their country's steadfast alliance. The talk between Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol and new U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio came after President Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th president on Monday. Items discussed between the two included bilateral relations, the North Korea nuclear issue, and trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. Welcoming Rubio's inauguration, Cho said he hopes the Seoul-Washington alliance that has continued for over 70 years will further develop under the new Trump administration. While saying the fact he is holding phone talks with Cho within 24 hours of taking office, Rubio emphasized that the two countries' alliance is the main pillar, the linchpin of peace and security on not only the Korean peninsula but also the region. A statement released by the U.S. State Department said they also talked about trilateral cooperation between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo, emphasizing its critical importance. It noted how the two discussed ways to advance bilateral cooperation to address shared challenges in the Indo-Pacific region.
The trilateral security cooperation mechanism was said to have been created to address shared threats and crises in the Indo-Pacific, so the word shared challenge is not new. However, it is highly likely that this mechanism could be explicitly made to serve as a way to counter China.
The North Korean nuclear issue was also included in their talks, and the two ministers agreed to maintain close coordination on this. The expert said Rubio, a Trump loyalist, could compromise his thoughts despite being a traditionalist.
He holds the traditional Republican view on foreign affairs and security, putting importance on alliances and taking a principled approach to the North Korea issue. But as Rubio has become Trumpified, there's a chance he might compromise his own views.
Meanwhile, after Cho stressed the importance of close communication between Seoul and Washington, Rubio agreed and invited him to the states to further discuss specific cooperative measures. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The South Korean economy marked a 2% annual growth last year, slightly below earlier projections. Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea's economy only showed modest growth in 2024. That's according to data from the Bank of Korea released on Thursday, which shows that the country's gross domestic product, a key indicator of economic growth, grew 2% on year in 2024. This was lower than both the central bank's November forecast of 2.2% and the government's forecast of 2.1%.
After our November forecast, political uncertainty in the country grew, and economic sentiment weakened, which then impacted private consumption. Construction investment also remained sluggish as orders remained weak.
In 2024, private consumption rose 1.1%, which was lower than the 1.8% increase of the year before, while construction investment entered into negative territory. But as exports saw a sharp rise, jumping to 6.9% from 3.9% in 2023, leading economic growth, while modest, to be higher than that of last year's 1.4% on solid exports, a rise after 3 straight years of decline. As for the fourth quarter, economic growth expanded only 0.1% on quarter and was also lower than the central bank's forecast. The central bank mainly attributed this to small growth in private and public spending as well as negative growth in construction investment. This follows an on-quarter increase of 1.3% in the first quarter, negative growth of 0.2% in the second, and 0.1% in the third quarter. With last year's economic growth hovering below forecast, there are rising concerns about South Korea's economic growth this year, fueled by factors such as U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs.
Korean economy has been dependent upon the international trade and export to the United States. Multinational enterprise has promised to build a factory in the United States to avoid the tariff, but as long as they make use of some parts produced in China or other countries, they are still subject to the tariff.
The Bank of Korea Monday lowered this year's GDP growth forecast to as low as 1.6% and the government to 1.8% in its 2025 economic policy plans released early this month. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
On the corporate front, SK hynix staged a stellar performance last year on the back of strong demand for AI memory. Ian, he has more.
SK hynix, the world's second-largest memory chip maker, has announced that it recorded its highest-ever revenue and operating profit in 2024, driven by the strong demand for high-bandwidth memory. The company said Thursday that its revenue surpassed 66 trillion Korean won, or around $46 billion, marking a 102% increase compared to the previous year. Operating profit turned positive, soaring to just over $16 billion. Last year's fourth quarter also saw a record-high operating profit of over $6 billion. SK hynix reported record revenue surpassing 2022 by over $14 billion, and its operating profit exceeded the 2018 peak. One expert says the first half of this year is expected to be very promising, noting Trump's AI initiative.
Given the new launch of Trump government, semiconductor industry in general and HBM in particular, there are a lot of good materials to push SK hynix stock price at the moment. So it is quite positive in the short-term based.
Meanwhile, LG Electronics achieved record high revenue in 2024, reaching approximately $61 billion, a 6.6% increase compared to the previous year. This growth was driven by strong performance in its core home appliance business and expanding automotive electronics sector, which has seen 9 years of consecutive growth. This marks the company's highest revenue in 2 years. However, both annual and quarterly operating profit declined, attributed to slower recovery in global consumer electronics demand and rising logistics costs. The company experienced an earnings shock in quarter 4, with operating profit halving and falling more than 56% year-on-year to over $93 million. On the same day, Hyundai Motor also released last year's revenue data, reporting over 175 trillion Korean won, or more than $121 billion, which is up 7.7% on year, but operating profit declined 5.9% to around $9.7. Hyundai Motor's revenue for the fourth quarter of 2024 rose nearly 12% compared to the same period last year, driven by strong sales of high-value models, including hybrid and Genesis vehicles, which boosted the average selling price. However, quarter 4 operating profit fell 17% to almost $2 billion, impacted by higher incentives, external uncertainties, and a sharp rise in exchange rates. A Hyundai official stated that despite these challenges, the company continues to grow, supported by strong North American sales and increasing hybrid model sales. 이은희, Arirang News.
During the upcoming Lunar New Year holidays, or 설날, around 16,000 hospitals and clinics will provide services, with nearly 3,000 being open on Lunar New Year's Day, which is January 29th. The Health Ministry stated on Thursday that more hospitals will be in operation than last year's Chuseok and Seollal holidays, the latter of which came before the country's prolonged medical standoff between doctors and the government. It also pledged to operate an emergency medical control center to monitor open hospitals, clinics, and pharmacies to minimize gaps in the emergency medical system. Samsung Electronics Unpacked conference took place on Wednesday local time in San Jose, California. There, the tech giant unveiled its latest flagship smartphones, the Galaxy S25 series, with AI taking center stage. For a closer look, our business correspondent Moon Hae-ryun joins us here. Hae-ryun, tell us more about what is new.
Well, Changmin, I went to take a look for myself at the new smartphones in Gangnam today, so here's what I saw. The Galaxy S25, S25 Plus and S25 Ultra are all equipped with new AI tools unseen in their predecessors, unveiled as the firm's first AI smartphones a year ago. The new models will hit the shelves on February 7th in the same price range as the S24. They use Google's Gemini AI model alongside Samsung's in-house AI voice assistant Bixby and Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Elite chips for on-device processing, meaning that you don't have to be connected to the internet to be able to use AI functions. And these AI functions provide a key element in the S25 user experience, personalization.
With the S25, users can enjoy a seamless experience where the AI, agent and personalized AI features make life easier. Just say what you need, and the phone will recommend and handle it for you.
For example, Now Brief and Now Bar are new services that provide a morning feed catering to your personal preferences based on user data, as well as giving you updates throughout the day, such as giving you directions to your next meeting or giving you a breakdown of the latest sports games you've missed based on what teams you follow. And this is another reason why on-device processing is so crucial, because personal data used to tailor these functions will only be stored and processed on the phone. With many using mobile phones to search the web, Gemini's search tool enables users to look up information from their own images and even videos. While the new AI features are the main focal point of the new phones, the hardware also boasts some upgrades. The new Ultra line has a 50-megapixel sensor on its ultra-wide rear camera in contrast to the S24's 12 megapixels for better quality images and videos, and also features a new, hardier screen. The series overall has rounded corners with a reduced bezel for bigger display, and there's an even thinner model to come called the Galaxy S25 Edge. This model was briefly previewed at the end of the Unpacked event, setting up competition in the skinny smartphone market, with Apple's ultra-thin model expected to come later this year.
Hae-ryun, are there any other new reveals from Samsung alongside their new phones?
Well, there's actually a new monthly subscription service that they're planning to launch called the new Galaxy Club. So subscribers can choose between a 12-month or 24-month plan and effectively purchase the latest Galaxy smartphone at half the upfront cost. Last month, Samsung entered the appliance subscription market with its AI products by introducing the AI Subscription Club service. I asked an expert about why Samsung Electronics might feel the need to launch such a service like this alongside its newest model, and here's what he said.
As data builds up, they can provide a variety of services powered by tailored AI and large language models. In the long term, they can use the smartphone's AI chip to deliver personalized services in real time and apply AI in specific areas to their needs.
You mentioned earlier that Samsung Electronics is entering the ultra-thin smartphone market alongside Apple. With S25 series in general, where do they stand in terms of the competition out there?
So right now, the smartphone competition is extremely competitive, and not just between Samsung Electronics and Apple with the biggest portions of the pie, but Chinese companies too. So both Apple and Samsung Electronics saw a decline in shipments last year, according to data from the International Data Corporation, while Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi experienced the fastest growth with a more than 15% increase. But Samsung stands out with its diverse lineup of devices, positioning it to integrate AI across phones, cars, and home appliances seamlessly.
This is the only company in the world that has it all. Looking ahead to the AI era, if collaboration across the board becomes the norm and personalized AI services based on data become a part of everyday life, I think Samsung is in an incredibly strong position.
Right, Hae-ryun, thanks for hearing your report today.
Thank you for having me.
The skies have been filled with dust for 4 days now. The air quality in most parts of the country is still at a bad level, with ultrafine dust advisory still in place. As for the ultrafine dust forecast, dust levels in many areas will gradually move back to normal levels tomorrow, except for some areas in central and western parts of the country. Meanwhile, more rain or snow is forecast along the East Coast between tomorrow night and Saturday to relieve the dryness. Until then, the atmosphere stays very dry with dry weather advisories. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at -2 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon and Gyeongju at -5 degrees. Highs will move up to 9 degrees in Seoul, Daegu and Gyeongju 12 degrees. Sunny and warm weather will be seen in inland areas this weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.